vesting. Vesting is an economic term in a term sheet. And it is important for employees and also founders to understand the term, because in most VC contracts, the shares of these people are vested. So vesting is a clause that protects the VC, at least to some extent, that the interest between VC and the entrepreneur is aligned, because the VC gives the money to the entrepreneur and he wants to work with this money on a certain time period. And this is normally the time period where the shares are vested. What is vesting in general? A company, and this could be a part in the VC's contract that the company does something. The company issues a certain amount of shares or stock over a fixed period of time. It could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It depends on how long the company wants to bind the receiving parties, for example, the entrepreneurs, to the company, to the contract. And this is how vesting normally works. So the VC, as a representative in that case, says, if I give you $2 million, in the case we had before, I would like you to use that $2 million over the next 4 years in order to create more value within the $2 million. Now what you get is the shares you have will be vested over that 4 years of time. If you have key employees as an entrepreneur and you give them a work contract and say, but yeah, if you also, besides the work contract, get stock options, I want you to be with me over a certain period of time. And this is where vesting comes in, because it helps you to bind the receiving party to the agreement. A vesting period in most cases in VC's contracts is typically 4 years. It might be a little less, but in most cases it's 4 years. And it has a cliff period. Cliff period is the time before the first stock will be vested. If you look at vesting, before we go into detail from a theoretical standpoint, what we said before, if two parties are dependent on each other, you'd like to align interest. And one of the interests of the VC is to bind the management over that certain period of time where the management has to create value. So this is how to understand vesting from a theoretical standpoint. It is to align interest between the VC and the entrepreneur. The VC as the principal, the entrepreneur as the agent, and prevent the entrepreneur from moral hazard. And moral hazard in that case would be leaving the company too early without having created enough value. Now, how does vesting work? Well, take an example. An employee joins the company you founded in February 2016. You say he gets 10,000 shares from an employee stock option program, ESOP. So you have a stock option program and you grant 10,000 shares to that specific employee. However, you say you have to earn that over 48 months. Over the next 4 years. And you have a 6-month cliff period. So within the first 6 months, you won't get any stock options out of that program. And after 6 months, you start getting the stock options over the next 42 months, which is the remaining period until you've reached the 48 months. Now, let's look at different scenarios. Scenario 1, the employee drops out after 5 months. What's happening? Well, if he gets the stock options here, 10,000 at the very beginning, and he leaves after 5 months, which is here, the cliff is not reached at the exit of the employee, no shares will be vested, he gets nothing. Because the cliff is after 6 months, not after 5 months. That helps you as the entrepreneur with the employees, also the VC with his entrepreneurs, that they don't leave too early, that you also have a certain period of time to get information about the other side in this so-called two-sided interaction. So the employee ends with 0 shares in that case. Let's look at the next scenario. Same scenario at the very beginning, 10,000 shares employee stock option program, vesting 48 months, 6 months cliff, 42 months vesting period. The employee drops out after a year. So what does that mean? After a year, it means the cliff is already reached, so the vesting starts. And if he does an exit in February 2017, which is exactly 6 months after the cliff started, or 1 year after he started to work for the company, he gets 12 of 48. So he gets 12 months of those 48 months of shares, which means he gets a quarter of the shares, 2,500 to the employee, and the remaining 7,500 of the 10,000, they remain in the company. Important to say, before you reach the cliff, you get nothing. However, your vesting already works. That is why you calculate this full year as a quarter after 4 years and not only 6 months of 42. It means more for the employee at the very end. If he reaches that cliff, then he jumps over the cliff. Let's take a next scenario, and then you probably have a good idea about what vesting or what vesting means. The same example for the vesting terms we had before. The employee stays for at least 4 years, maybe longer. What does he get? He gets the full number of 10,000 shares, and the company doesn't have any of the shares left. And this is how employee stock option programs, ESOPs, are being made, and this also could be part in the VC contract to the entrepreneur, but in most cases also for the ESOP program. Because what you'd like to do is you'd like to align these interests, you'd like to keep key employees, key people in your business, and vesting is the way to do that, because they only get the full number of shares and the full number of stock and stock options if they stay the period of the time they agreed on. Sometimes in VC contracts you find a so-called accelerated vesting, because what you can say, it's not fair if a VC comes in that he takes away everything from the entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs get an accelerated vesting compared to employees. And accelerated vesting means a number of shares, might be 25% or might be 50%, will remain at the entrepreneurs, and the rest of the remaining shares will be vested. But again, this is only on negotiations and the theoretical background. This is how you can understand why it makes sense, is aligning interest. The VC wants you to work for his money, and that's fair.